Hey y'all, CB here, the no bullshit welder. Bringing you up to speed on what's going on. I got a call from a buddy of mine that's a boss, a foreman for a buddy of mine's construction company. And he wanted to know if I want to do some structural welding on site for a guy. They were setting some steel for this feller in Oakland, Maryland. And they were about to get all the steel set, and he needed a bunch of welding done. He gave me the guy's contact information. I called this feller, and he seemed like a heck of a good guy. He's building a grocery store, a Shop and Save. He owns several other Shop and Save grocery stores and has done property development in different ways. We got a deal for an hourly rate and a certain number of hours per day. Job's about 2 hours from the shop. So obviously there's cost involved with that, and but where it's at, I'm driving it. And most of the guys from around here that's been working on that job, virtually all of them that I've talked to, they're driving it. Nobody's been getting a motel there and staying there overnight. I don't think that it's worth getting a motel, but it is a long day. If you're going to be on the construction site from 7 a.m. to 5:30 every day and drive 2 hours, the way I am with diet and food prep to deal with in the evening to get ready for the next day, take a shower, go to bed, and get up and do it again. But that's what's up. So situation with this job, I think it's a really positive thing because I like the guy that I'm working for. Seems like a really reasonable fella. I have a little bit of a problem with Maryland. I always have. Maryland's firearms laws are absolute bullshit. I generally carry a firearm concealed. I have a concealed carry permit. I don't have to do that. In the state of West Virginia, anyone 18 years of age or older can carry a concealed and loaded firearm in the state of West Virginia as a West Virginia resident. And be completely within the law. However, I do have a concealed carry permit, and all the states around my state except for Maryland reciprocate my permit. If I drive into Virginia or Kentucky or Ohio or Pennsylvania, I'm completely legal to carry a loaded and concealed firearm, and that can be in my vehicle, in my person, whatever. Can't do it in Maryland. And I always said, I don't want to go to Maryland. I'm not going to stop in Maryland to buy gas. I'm not going to stop in Maryland to eat a cheeseburger. And I don't want to work in Maryland. But here I find myself, this guy, I want to work for this guy. I haven't done any of this bar joists and bridging type work. I was thinking yesterday, when's the last time I ran bar joists and bridging? I think it was 1997. I started NBS Welding in January of 2000 and went into the drilling industry then. And of course in 97, I did work structural and did a lot of bar joists and bridging as a welder for TKS Contracting when they had a lot of prevailing wage jobs for the state. But in the latter part of 1997, I went to work on the Green Bank telescope, and And from there up until now, I hadn't done any bar joists and bridging. But within structural welding and within the welding field, especially in the bigger cities and buildings like grocery stores and places that are being developed, running bar joists and bridging is something that a welder will commonly do. And in a lot of cases, after the bar joists and bridging, you will plug weld Q decking on top of the structure. Sometimes that gets rubber and rocks put on it as a roof. Sometimes it gets concrete poured on it, you know, what have you. I talked to the developer on this job. He is not going to plug weld his Q decking. He is going to put down Q decking, but he's going to screw it down, which is another option, and I think, you know, that's a good option too. Depends on how many welders you got. A qualified welder can plug weld decking down a lot faster than guys can screw it. But you can get 5 young guys with almost no experience and put them on impact guns and get decking screwed down. You can't get guys with no experience to plug weld decking. It won't work. You'll blow a bunch of holes in it. It's thin. You'll make a mess. So unless you got a crew of welders that's used to plugging down decking, it's probably worth just screwing it down. There's going to be probably tips and tricks that I'll remember as I get into it that I need to share, but I'm not going to be filming a lot on site. I'm there to work for this fella, and I like to stay busy all day on something like that. It's going to be a little bit different than me at the shop on work that I've quoted. You know, when I'm working at the shop on work that I've quoted or priced, I can take as much time as I want shooting video or whatever. That doesn't affect the customer. But in this case, if I was on site doing a lot of filming, that would be negative for the customer, and we're not going to do that. So that's what's going on. This could last days, it could last weeks, it could last months. It depends on a lot of different things, but the way this is basically being done, the way a lot of buildings are built, you've got block walls laid up as your exterior. You've got steel columns that are set on footers in the interior. I-beams will be set and connected usually with bolts to those steel columns, and bar joists will be set on top of your I-beams, and angle iron bridging will be run through the bar joists to stiffen them, and that's the bulk of the welding that we're going to be dealing with. So MBS on site, here we go. Building a grocery store. Square tube columns, I-beam structure on block walls with bar joists, and of course bar joists get welded at the end, and they get this bridging, angle iron bridging. The owner's wanting me to run the bridging down the center of these rows because he's counting on me to get them straight. He's going to get some other guys to weld that can run other bridging. There's going to be a couple more rows in there, but he wants me to make sure that the joists are plumb. So by me going through the center and putting the center bridging in place and getting the joist plumb, them other guys can come along and just go and weld it in. And he told me that he wants to get with me tomorrow for a couple of hours and work on a few little issues, structural issues, where he's got a column over there that's out of plumb, but there's only one. And I think if we loosen everything up, we'll be able to get that adjusted and be in good shape. There's that I-beam across that opening right there got set. They set it where the drawing said to set it, but it's 2 inches too low. And those 5 joists that are on it, well, the company that did the steel is going to send some channel to set those 5 joists on so they can be up to the right elevation. But I won't do a lot of filming here during the day, but I will take notes on maybe some tips and whatnot. And if I can get a chance, maybe back at the shop at some point, to put together a video of things that would help someone run bar joists and bridging. You know, maybe I'll do that for guys that are out searching that, because they may be employed by it. Bar joists ain't going nowhere. This is a very efficient way to build something this size. These bar joists will get Q decking put on top of them, and I've already asked the owner about the Q decking. Q decking in a lot of cases is welded down. It gets plug welded. He's not going to plug weld it. You can also screw it down, and so that's what he's doing. And of course, you know, he doesn't need a welder to do that. He can just get some help, get some hands, and screw that Q decking down. But this is the first day here, and seems like a great guy to work for, and be back in the morning. He's wanting me to check if all these were welded. And they're not. So before we run any more bridging, we're going to be welding down some joists. So what you'll see on jobs like this, your bar joists will get welded to I-beams in some places, like you see there in the center. Your I-beams, there'll be plates set in the block walls at the end, and there'll be some stud anchors fastened to those plates so that the plates are set into the block wall, and then your I-beams will go in a pocket there, and your I-beam will get welded to that plate at the bottom. And then on an edge, your bar joists will set on a plate that's grouted into the wall and get welded. I've seen a lot of different sets of drawings on the spec for the welds. When you weld your bar joists down to the wall, to the plates in the wall and the beam, you'll commonly go out on a site, like even on this site when I got here, guys were welding the whole length, sometimes 4 or 5 inches of weld. What I've seen on drawings is 1 inch on each side is all they call for. Yeah, any more than that is it's just unnecessary. A lot of times I'll go 1.5 inches, you know. I mean, a little more ain't gonna hurt, but if you're welding out something, 5, 6, 4 inches, you're welding way too much. And commonly guys will run a 1/8 inch 7018 when they're welding down bar joists. I'm running 3/16 7014. If you know me, you know I like the high deposit rods. Especially if it's in the flat position, I use a high deposit rod, and I'll use the biggest diameter I can. This scenario here on this front beam, they set this I-beam and made the pockets, the beam pockets, they did it at the elevation that the drawings and everything said to, and they found out later that these 7 joists right here were 2.5 inches too low, and it was too late really to shim up the beam or change anything. So the engineer fix, what they came up with is to shim it up with that 2.5 inch square tubing. So that's how that's done, and that's fine. You know, you have stuff like this, shit happens, and you got to do something about it, and that structurally that's fine. And this kind of work, it all gets covered up. It's not finished work. So you do what you got to do and keep on getting it done. Talking about bar joists, running bar joists and bridging. Just did a job doing that, and the interesting thing about that, I haven't run bar joists and bridging since 1997. I started NBS Welding in January of 2000, and between 97 and 2000, I was an iron worker on the Green Bank telescope construction. The bar joists and bridging aren't really ran any different than they were when I did it in 1997. So came back and did it in 2023, and it's pretty much the same deal. And you run into a lot of the same issues on those sites. So I hope if you're going out and breaking out into welding, I hope that at least getting to see the bar joist and bridging situation helps you out a little bit. I want to go over a few other things about bar joists and bridging, because obviously in the construction of these buildings, that's something that's been the same for all these years, and good chance that that's going to be some work that you might run into doing as a welder. Run into a lot of the same problems with it. And the bar joists themselves, if you're looking at the top rung of one, it's going to look like that, and you're going to be running your bridging across like this. So the tack is going to be a fillet weld like this, where my finger's at. That's pretty simple. Now on the bottom, your bar joist will be like this, and your bridging will be like this. And the way we usually do is we'll tack right here, right here, right here, and right here. So you got 4 tacks. 3 is probably enough. I've had some where I did 3 and that was it. You're going to have to ask the people you're working for how much weld they want on them. But one of the things about it is, when you're doing these tacks like this right here, you're taking a 1/8 inch 7018 usually, and you're welding on the edge. These bar joists and bridging that I just put in were only 1/8 of an inch in thickness. So you're burning on the sharp edge of a 1/8 inch material with a 1/8 inch rod. Now a lot of people would say, oh, for 1/8 inch material you should use 3/32 rod. I don't doubt that in a lot of cases, but running bar joists and bridging, you don't want no 332 rod. You want a 1/8. You want the 1/8 inch rod for the amount of metal that's in the rod and the ability to beat on it. Because these are painted. They have at least a welding primer on them, and you got to weld through that. And a lot of people would say, oh, if you're going to weld something, you should grind it to shiny metal. Don't go out on a bridging and bar joist job and expect them to let you grind all this down to shiny metal. It is not done. That's unheard of. You're out there in the open air with a stick welder, you can burn through this little bit of primer. So what you're going to do is you're going to be making these tacks on this sharp edge, and one of the problems that a lot of young welders and new hires run into is they'll get out there and they'll go to work for somebody, and the guy's got a welding machine for him to use there, and the welder don't weld very good. That's just the way it is. You know, the guy that you're working for, he might not have, a really new, more expensive welding machine to run this bar joist and bridging with, and you don't need a really nice, expensive welding machine for this kind of welding. But the fact that a lot of contractors have machines that don't weld very good, if you're going to go out and weld, you just got to deal with that. I can take those machines and weld just fine with them. But you're going to have to know if he's got a machine that don't weld very good, maybe the rods ain't very good, might have burn up copper on the welding leads that doesn't conduct very well, might have an old loose stinger and an old loose ground. There can be things that can make it a challenge, and one of the big challenges with a machine that doesn't weld very good like that is you run into, it's hard to strike an arc. So you gotta long arc it to get things warm enough to get down there and make a tack. And a lot of times when you're long arcing, you're putting extra heat into the metal, and then when you go to weld, it'll melt off. And you burn it. Instead of welding it together, you're cutting it. and that's undesirable. So one of the things that can help you on these bar joists, on these tacks like this, is the dance from one to the other. So I say you might want to learn how to dance. You want to put a tiny amount of arc and weld on this one, and then go to this one, and then back and forth. Now, by going back and forth, you're allowing the one that you just stepped away from to cool while you do a little work on this one, and then that one can cool while you do a little work on that one. A good welder with a good machine and good rods can usually fire up and put these 4 tacks on there and be done with it. But if you're working with dirty material, rods that don't weld good, welding leads that are burned up, ground that don't conduct good, a loose and crappy stinger, a welding machine don't weld good, this dancing technique can help you quite a bit. So let's tack this up with that dancing technique, and we'll get a chance to see what that looks like. So if you're getting your first job coming up, running bar joists and bridging, at least, you know, this video could give you some idea of what a few things you might run into. And you can see how this dancing technique, where you do a little tack, do a little tack, do a little tack, do a little tack, you can get, for having a 1/8 inch welding rod on the sharp end of a 1/8 inch metal, you can get some pretty heavy tacks on there. That ain't going nowhere. That bridging can be stuck on that joist more gooder than it ever need to be. And you're gonna you gotta work for somebody on this type of stuff. This isn't like pipeline welding. You're gonna wanna burn the rods up. You don't get a new rod every time you strike an arc when you're doing bar joists and bridging. And another thing that's a lot different than pipeline is you are going to weld through paint. And since you're welding through paint, you're going to want to find, you know, if you're going to weld right here, find you a big flat spot. You got a used rod, you got a material with paint on it, and you're going to have to bang that thing. You're going to have to bust the flux off the end of that rod. You're going to have to jab through that primer to get that arc struck. And the beautiful thing about it is they just like another thing where I could say that it's totally different than the pipeline is they're not going to worry much about these arc burns here on this bridging. If you gotta bang that rod to get that thing lit up, that's what you got to do. You know, you don't want to be up there trying to tickle it and stick the rod, and then it's stuck on there, and you're trying to get it loose and wiggle it, and the boss is looking up there thinking, this guy don't know what the hell he's doing. So hopefully you do look like you know what you're doing, and you can do all right with it. And thing that'll surprise you about this bar joist and bridging, if you've never done it before, is it's everywhere, and you've been walking under it, and you ain't been paying no attention. You know, that's what's really funny. You go in your local Walmart, maybe Lowe's, different grocery stores and different places. You know, most generally, if you do happen to look up, which most people almost never do, you're going to see the bar joists and the bridging and the bottom of the Q decking in those buildings. Now, you'll also see a whole lot of mechanical stuff generally. All of the lights will be hanging from those bar joists. There'll be a lot of plumbing. If there's any electrical, that you might see conduit. And it's funny how you walk through your local Walmart or whatever store, you've been in there 100 times and you never thought of it. But if you go in there now and look up, you'll be like, oh yeah, bar joists. They're everywhere, and that works everywhere. When new buildings like that are being built, they need a welder to run the bar joists and bridging, and that's work that's out there. Like I say, this job that I just did, that's the first time I've done it since 1997, and it's being done virtually the same way. So that's a little bit of an introduction to it, and that's all for this one. Y'all have a good one, and thanks for watching.